and Girls Clubs, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And today we're kind of exploring relationships and partnering with schools and after-school programs. And hopefully they're going to share some exciting stories and strategies from how their organizations have successfully partnered, and then kind of open it up to the group. So I'm going to hand it over to you two, and yeah, enjoy the presentation, everyone.
Hi, Felicia. Just a reminder to unmute your line. You can select *6.
Okay, how's that? Are we able to co-talk, Carrie and I?
Yeah, absolutely. You're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, awesome. Carrie, are you ready to go? Okay, I'll just...
Here Carrie? I am, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yep, now I can. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were actually going to partner in the discussion.
We are.
Okay, ready, go team. Well, welcome. This is my first webinar presentation. How about you, Carrie?
It is.
So I guess forgive us if we're a little bit awkward or clunky, and thank you for letting me learn with you all today through this application. And I am going to start with the first part of the presentation, and then Carrie's going to take it from there. And I would like to encourage you as well to use the hashtag that you'll see on the bottom of the slides. I'll be following the Twitter feed, so if you've got your phone or your other device handy and you feel more comfortable sharing using the Twitter hashtag, I will be following any questions or comments on Twitter today to respond to them. So having said that, I'm the Youth Resiliency Coordinator for Parkland School Division, and we were really excited when Caitlin approached us to talk about this partnership because I think with all partnerships that they are definitely about relationship building, and I'm excited to see on the line that we also have a representative from Parkland County here, Cindy Davies, who has helped move this partnership along out in Wabamun, which is a small town located probably 30 minutes northwest, or just north, Carrie? North of...
Or west. West of Edmonton.
Yeah, north of Edmonton, thanks. And it's a small school. It's probably about 90 students strong, and it represents a huge rural part of our county where there are schools that are largely without services out here in this area. So we began this partnership, I would say about 3 years ago when Carrie and we met at another school, and I realized how amazingly talented the Boys and Girls Club and Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Edmonton, how great their team was and how wonderfully connected they were to a lot of Edmonton organizations. And I knew that they should help our schools along with a number of pieces that were more difficult for us to do on a day-to-day basis. So a number of our schools see the need for after-school programming, but they don't really know how to get that off the ground, and they find the logistics to be overwhelming and exhausting. So having said that, the first part of the process is to figure out what are our needs as a school. And for our rural schools, they realize that most of the kids are bussed in and bussed out to the school, so there's not a lot of parent drop-off. And the 3 to 6 p.m. time period is really difficult for them. And so we needed to get at what are our needs internally within the school. And then from the organization, whoever's going to run our after-school program, which in this case we decided to partner with the Big Brothers Big Sisters out of the city and figure out how that would work. But what would their needs be? And then we, every year, as a part of what we do through the Youth Resiliency Initiative, is we look at internal assets. What do we have within our schools? What's already working really well? who's already working really well, who are some of the champion parents we have, champion teachers, artisans, like what do we have as far as human resources internally and people who aren't already exhausted, who could even think about this work, ask questions, and start to frame what it would look like if we were to provide a space where kids could gather in a safe, supportive way after school, 3 to 6 p.m., 3 to 7 p.m., Fridays, whatever it would be. We don't come in with anything other than a few questions to this dream team of people who can start to look at possibilities. And then, you know, I guess the next question is a little bit more advanced, but why does this partnership make sense? I guess that actually comes a little bit later on, but I would say one of the most important things is just bringing the right people to the initial, like, visioning process of why would we do this, and why does this make sense for the nature of our community and the nature of our school community to get involved and to create this space. And I'll just share one funny story that I get to sit with 22 different schools on a regular basis, and I hear them having conversations around, the after-school time period, like how long are teachers actually supposed to be out on the playground after school? You know, is it 3:15? Do they have to be out there to supervise until 3:40? What if there's a kid on the playground until 4:30, 5 o'clock? Whose kid is that now? You know, and because they're on school grounds, technically they still belong to the kid. So when you have more than one kid on a playground outside by themselves, and we kind of don't have anything in place, it gets a little messy for schools to say, well, it seems like that might be one indicator that there might be a need in this community for an after-school program to exist, for a safe place for kids to gather, right? In some of our schools where, again, we'd love to have after-school programs, it's a rural community like the one out at Wabamun. So we know that kids don't have a lot of recreational or programming opportunities out there in that community, but how would we actually present that to the community in a way that asks good questions instead of making them feel defensive? So again, why does this partnership make sense? It makes sense because it's the best thing for kids, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we knew from the beginning, Carrie, how to move the conversation forward. Carrie, do you want to jump in there at all? Around that visioning part of like asking good questions to get the conversation going?
You know what? I will in 2 slides, so go for it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Again, I have a prompt here, right, Jennifer? Because I'm going to talk about comprehensive school health. Jennifer is already tuned out.
Yep.
Not a good sign. No.
No, I'm here. Which question was it?
How many people on the line are familiar with the comprehensive school health approach?
Okay. This is a poll question, so just select which answer is best representative.
So the people, okay. Oh, awesome. Oh, wait, this is so cool. So I'm watching people, real-time aggregate whether or not they are familiar with comprehensive school health. All right, that's awesome, half and half. So now what do I do? Close it or? Okay, awesome. So I won't speak too much to it, but comprehensive school health is an approach that's recognized by the World Health Organization. School boards across Canada are using it to really think about the work that they're doing to promote wellness in an equitable way. We here at Parkland School Division are using it in all 22 of our schools as an approach that will help create a culture of wellness. So everything from how we think about nutrition to physical activity and mental health, these 3 priority areas, how well are we doing them, how comprehensively are we thinking about them. And I think that the steps that we use for comprehensive school health are very much aligned with the steps that we used in order to get the Wabamun program off the ground. The first part, again, I'll just say is preparing the team and developing a shared vision. I think we knew that we wanted to serve our rural communities out here. We knew that our urban kids in Spruce Grove, which is a much larger center, had a lot more resources and access to different opportunities, and we knew that from the data that we had collected from our schools and some of our municipal partners. So we knew that our rural community was a space where we thought we would allocate a number of human resources and conversations in order to get more opportunities up and running out there. That shared vision then led to a few more steps. And I put the little picture of the breakfast there because I truly think that these conversations, they can't be, even in the way that I'm talking right now, like frontal cortex just downloaded on people. It has to be like, hey, do you want to have a cup of coffee and talk about blah, blah, blah? Or do you think that we could meet and just see what you know about, blah, blah, blah school? Because the messaging and what people hear is so different from partner to partner, and what they know and the part of the story that they bring to the conversation, that I truly think setting up the partnership well allows the community, it gives it a much better chance for it to be embedded within the community and for the community to make it their own. So I guess I should say that, like the role that I play in the after-school project now is really just to continue to be a facilitator in that project. I don't provide direct services, nor does Carrie. We don't provide direct services. We're not there at the after-school program on a day-to-day basis. We just helped form and move the relationships along. Okay. Just checking the Twitter there, and yeah, so I'm going to let Carrie jump in here and start to talk a little bit about healthy partnerships.
Thank you, Felicia. And as I go through, please feel free to add in after each step here that we talk through. When we think about healthy partnerships as an organization, we've been partnering with schools in a number of different ways for well over 15 years. And I think that every partnership goes through its ups and downs, but there's really merit. The school systems in Alberta and in the Edmonton area have really understood that schools can't do it alone. In order to better educate and ensure our kids' success in schools, partnerships and collaborations are just key to making that happen. I recently was looking at a document that Alberta Education put out, and it was around raising Alberta's high school completion rate. And when we think that if we're all supports and programs in place in schools is ultimately for that one goal as well, is to increase our high school completion rates here in Alberta and also to help kids be successful as they navigate the world of schooling and then that transition into adulthood. It was great to see in Alberta Education's report that was done on high school completion that one of the important strategies listed is out-of-school programming. For us as an organization, that's how we know it is very important to partner with our local schools. So when Parkland School Division and through Felicia approached our agency about partnering, we knew that there was a good fit there. We know that one of these strategies is important, one to community and two to the schools as well. So when we think about visioning, and I know that Felicia has spoken briefly about that, we as an organization, we come in and when we have the initial conversations with school is we do want to hear what is their vision, what outcome are they trying to achieve. And sometimes schools can have a challenge with trying to understand what that is because they are there from an educational academic focus. And their really mandate is about having kids be successful academically. And when you partner with social service agencies, you bring in that holistic approach, which is just, again, around success for kids and youth as a whole. When we look at identifying program outcomes, we want to look at, is our focus an academic focus in an after-school program? Is it a tutoring focus? Is it a recreational focus? We know that there's lots of research out there about the amount of exercise and activity that children need in a day. Is there a cultural component? Again, looking at who the demographics are, what does that look like? Some of the other models of after-school programming that I've seen have also included a therapeutic component. So again, we might be helping children with some bullying issues, we might be helping with self-esteem issues, and there could be a little bit more of a therapeutic component. Really important to be working with that school partner on what you guys want to achieve together. And then also what we find is important is if before we start designing our program is looking at how will we know when we're successful. What will that look like? So where's that end goal? What are we trying to achieve? And then what are our steps to get there? Felicia spoke a little bit about the data. Really important to identify the strengths and the needs. in terms of the community. I think one of the reasons sometimes programming fails is a needs assessment hasn't been completed adequately enough to understand where the need is. And what that needs to involve also is the voice of the youth, the voice of parents, the voice of teachers. Really important to get that collective whole approach. Sometimes as community service organizations, we have a service to offer and we think we can just go in and do that. And sometimes that's where some programs, again, may see lack of success because they haven't adequately looked at the needs of the school. We really want to look at that program population. So is there a need for a certain age group? Is there a need for a certain gender? Is there a need for cultural programming? Sometimes we look at the need around children who are struggling in school. And sometimes there's also a need for kids who are doing really well in school for some extra advancement opportunities. So again, I think together when the schools and the community agency come together, it is to look at and identify what population do we want to serve and what does that look like. What we will find in this sector is that the need far exceeds what is possible. And so we often have to make some difficult choices around priority or where do we begin. We can find that there's probably quite a continuum of services that are required in most schools, and rural areas are no different. As Felicia has alluded to in this project, we definitely knew there was a lack of services that was available already. And so from there, we have to identify where do we start, what's the best, if we can add one piece in, what is that going to be? And so there's a priority there that we have to look at in terms of the needs. Anything you want to add on that, Felicia?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. I'd just like to say that while Carrie and I, sit here and kind of run through this seamless presentation, that the clunkiness of the partnership really was that, we also went to the county and talked with our family and community support services stakeholders and our recreation services, and we said, we don't know what this will look like. We don't know if this will work. We know that we're going to start this program and see if we can make it sustainable. And we started it out at a different school. We started this program out with RBC's funding, after-school funding at Seba Beach School. And we didn't have the staff support for it. We could not get, because that school was 20 minutes further from Edmonton, we couldn't get all the staff drive in from Edmonton. So it was just too difficult to keep the staff there to support the program. It was too difficult to keep the kids there because there was no community base where kids could just walk home. And so we had to go back to the county and back to RBC and tell them both, well, we think we picked the wrong rural school to host it at. We're going to move it over to Wabamun, and this was halfway through the program. So I guess I'd just like to point out that was part of getting this off the ground is just the messiness of we thought we had the data right. We thought, oh, great, this school has a higher population of kids who are at risk and who are in need. But it didn't turn out that we read the data right. The kids just weren't there, they weren't coming, and the teachers weren't supporting it. So we told the other partners that and moved on. Hey, Carrie?
Absolutely. And I think as you're going to see as we go through this, that's a continuous piece in any partnership, is that constant looking at, is this working right? Is this meeting the outcomes that we've wanted to see? And if not, how do we adjust this? How do we take a right-hand turn instead of going down the road because, we're not getting where we need to go, and maybe it is a right-hand turn we need to do. And the end of that story, as Felicia has just alluded to, is after spring break, we started at the Wabamun site and saw great success. And we were able to turn that success that we saw in the last 3 months of the year into another full year after-school program starting then this September. And so, and I think that one of the biggest pieces we learned through all of this is just that communication with our supporters, our funders, and our schools, and our parents, where we just had to be very transparent and honest with people around what was working and what wasn't, and ask them to hang in with us, and we're going to take this right-hand turn, and we just want everyone to come with us, and let's see what happens down this road. I just see a question on here. What school did we move from? We moved from Seba Beach to Wabamun. So one of the third steps that we took in terms of looking at partnerships is kind of that roadmap, as I've just kind of alluded to, in that we had to do a program design. And that you have to write that all out. You know, you have to go through your steps and your timelines about what do you want to achieve and by when. We needed to identify the type of program and the service that was needed in terms of an after-school program. We had to look at how many days a week were we going to run. Could we run this 5 days a week? Could we run it 1-2 days a week? We also looked at what were the potential partners. So if we couldn't together through the school division and our agency, was there any other program partners that we could look at? Or if it was going to be run by one partner, what was that funding model going to be? And you'll see that as we continue on through this process. So it was really important to design a program going in so that we could then flesh it out more.
The only thing I would add there, Carrie, too, is that, again, an organization like Big Brothers Big Sisters, they have a lot of templates, they have a lot of experience, they have a lot of work that's already been done in this area. So even for other projects that we've explored with different school sites, we've called and listed their consulting help to say, hey, we're looking at developing, you know, this might not be an after-school program, but we're looking at doing some mentoring with our local businesses. We know this is work you guys do. And they've been amazingly generous in helping us because this is the work they do. So I would highly encourage, you know, I don't mean to give you more work, Carrie, but you guys have been incredibly helpful at just saving the school's time. And if you're going to present this to a school, one of the biggest things that they're going to think about is liability, joint user agreements, logistics around parent release forms, snacks, who pays for things like that, those types of things. Those are all questions that, you know, the Big Brothers Big Sisters has a really diverse array of programs going on around in different centers, and they can comment on how all of those things work as far as how you build your roadmap and your program design.
Wonderful. Thanks, Felicia. One of the next pieces and the next logical pieces after you're looking at your roadmap, because it's great to dream and vision, and then you have to draw yourself down to reality a little bit and how we're going to make this work. And that comes down to the resources. And I think it's really important to remember that in order to have sustainable programs, you must have sustainable resources. But also, in order to have sustainable resources, you have to have a sustainable program. These two pieces go hand in hand in terms of quality programming and the resources in order to operate it. When Felicia and I began to have conversations around an after-school program, as I said, after we did the program design and we decided that we wanted this to run 5 days a week from 3 until 6, that helps to create that foundation for a budget. We had to decide if there was any capacity that existed already within our organization or if we had to look for dollars. And in this situation, we had to look for some new dollars in order to be able to provide this service. Now, we did look at the existing resources available at the school level because it does take work from school administration to help support an after-school program within their school. It's part of that partnership piece, but we have to recognize that it also takes time. We then identify any other pieces that come into an after-school program budget, like space, food, supplies. Would we be using parent volunteers, community volunteers? What would that look like? Creating a budget can be difficult depending on the experience. Using your administration at a school who would have experience with a budget is helpful, or depending on your community organization. The resources become a very interesting and very difficult part of any partnership as to who's going to pay for what and is there enough money. And so there are a number of places that we went to in terms of looking for our dollars to support an after-school program. And, you know, from a community agency perspective, we probably have to apply for twice as many grants as you might receive because there are so many competitions out there. We've been very fortunate with this program through support through RBC, which is the Royal Bank, through our Parkland School Division, as well as recently TransAlta through United Way, has stepped up to the plate to offer us some resources. Staffing does create usually the largest budget item when we pay for staff and benefits. and transportation for us in terms of getting to that site because it is a little bit more rural. Staffing is an interesting and important component in terms of hiring the right staff who are qualified to work in after-school programming and have the right training and support in order to offer quality programming. Again, it goes back to that vision of what you'd like to offer and what outcomes you're trying to achieve, and how does that staff understand those pieces as well.
Can I, before you move to partnership, again, I don't know how to poll how many schools are on the line, but I would just like to say that some of the other hybrid ideas that have come forward in my work for after-school programming that would be interesting to explore if you have a school that's a willing participant are whether or not, you could use a staffing position, like a certificated staff member to run the after-school program who would start later and then perhaps receive training in after-school programming from an organization like Big Brothers Big Sisters. So one of the schools that inquired about it and has the space to run a great program, they are looking at whether or not next year they might keep one of their teachers later into the afternoon and have that, be a Block 7 / after-school program. And then the other interesting piece about resources, I think, is that a lot of people aren't aware of how an after-school program can serve so many different areas of youth development. So pitching that and spinning that, as Carrie said at the beginning of the presentation, so that you're thinking about the partner that you're trying to perhaps bring on board and thinking, is this partner interested in the development that we're doing with the kids around keeping them in a safe space in the community, keeping them physically active, helping with literacy development? What do they want to see out of this program, and how is this program designed? Because the program can be designed in any way. How can this program design meet off a number of youth development pieces, right? So for our teachers, one of the really important things that happens is now they have this additional homework support and another point person where they can say in the school, hey, whoever the program coordinator is, did so-and-so finish their English homework? And that person can say, yes, they did, because that person actually exists. There's communication, there's a relationship there, and it's happening right in the school. So they can go then and still drop off their books back at their locker, not lose all their stuff. It's just it's a neat thing to host it in a school space where there's lots of resources, the facility's great, and there's also that educational tie-in, because I think that creates more of an environmental space where the child can be successful and feel a sense of belonging. Thanks, Carrie.
The other piece to add to here as well is the use of volunteers. And so depending on our sites and our hours as an organization, we try to use as many community volunteers as possible. And again, we have a screening and enrollment process for volunteers coming in from the community, and then a support component once they're engaged in one of our programs. We knew going a little bit more rural that we would struggle with in terms of recruiting some community volunteers. But again, here's where Felicia and I were able to become a little creative, and we've had a number of initiatives where we use teens as volunteers in our programming. And this year we are looking at engaging our junior high students as volunteers to help support the work we're doing with the elementary kids in the after-school program. And so it's a great leadership opportunity for these youth and a great way for them to give back and for them to also be engaged in after-school activity up to 5 days a week, and a great for us to have some extra hands on deck. We will usually look at a staffing model of about a 1-to-10 ratio in an after-school program, and so, but it's great to have the additional support of the volunteers, as Felicia alluded to, can help with some reading after school, that in that one-on-one setting with sometimes that teen, or existing, doing a craft together with a teen, anything like that. So we're excited that that's going to happen for us this year. The next piece that we had to look at is putting something to paper. It's really important in any partnership that there's some documentation and some written agreement, sometimes called a partnership agreement or a memorandum of understanding amongst the two partners. it really helps to build that accountability for both of you and for both groups in terms of what is the expectation going forward. I have found in a number of different partnerships that we as an organization have been engaged in that this can mitigate challenges that can come up between the partners, because it's important to talk about these pieces right up front, right as you begin to work together, once you've kind of either secured your funding or you're looking for funding and you begin to put something to paper. It's really important to be able to, if there's a staffing, who's going to supervise the staff, who hires the staff, which policies and procedures do the staff follow? Is it that of the organization or that of the school? We talk about the money and the monetary, who's looking at what financial pieces coming in, and then who's paying for what. If there's supplies or food for the programming, is the partner or is the school responsible for those pieces? One of the biggest, very important pieces that needs to be in writing is around the insurance and the liability. And where are you sharing that liability? In most of the work that we do with schools, it is a shared liability, and there is some shared insurance around the programming and what would happen if. And it's really important to have those conversations. What happens if a child gets hurt in the after-school program within that school? You know, who has what liability and what insurance in order to cover that? Again, it just mitigates any issues, because issues do come up, misunderstandings do come up, and this helps just kind of keep things very grounded and focused. One of the other important steps that we wanted to spend some time on today is the evaluation component. And what we'd like to look at is around continuous improvement. So it's really important when we decide to engage in a project or a program together, how do we know that it's working? And how do we know that we're achieving the outcomes that we originally set out to do? There's a number of different ways that evaluation can occur and can happen, and there's a number of different forms of evaluation. And so I think together as partners, you have to look at what does that look like for us. Are we evaluating a partnership, or are we evaluating the outcomes for the kids? Or are we evaluating our processes? And so you need to be very clear up front as to what do you want to evaluate. And some of that may be based on your funding, because sometimes depending on funding agreements, there are certain pieces that are expected as part of your agreement in terms of what you will look at and what you will report back on. Almost all of the after-school research that is out there believes that any program that should operate should be evidence-based, data-driven. We know how important that is today. There's lots of really good research being done on after-school programming for children, and it's just important to ground your program within those best practices. It also helps for you to evaluate what you're doing once you implement, measuring that, and then learning from that, and then as I mentioned earlier, is making the adjustments that are needed. We knew when we first implemented our program out at Seba Beach that we weren't hitting the targets we had wanted to from a purely output perspective. And so we really wanted to look at, did we meet the need? Is there a need in this community? And as we changed locations, that changed significantly. And we were in a better location to serve the need based on the outcome we had wanted to achieve. And so we couldn't be afraid of making that adjustment. And we just had to walk through it very slowly and taking careful consideration around messaging to all partners involved, whether that was everything from our funder right down to that parent and child, where the program would no longer be offered.
And I'll just
Felicia?
jump in and
Yeah.
I'll just jump in and say that it's really nice again to have Carrie's organization lead that work. If you're a nonprofit, or I think we had a poll question about that too, Jennifer. Who's on the line here? Like what group they're from? So maybe if you could pull that up, then we can kind of see how much we speak to that part here. But yeah, that would be great if people could answer that real fast. Yeah. So cool. That's great. So we have mostly community nonprofits. Okay, so my piece is probably relevant then. Recreation and community nonprofit groups are, if you're trying to get in and work with a school, I would say that the evaluation and the data that you want to bring to them should definitely be tailored around the data that's coming out of Alberta Ed, the data that's coming out of EverActive Schools that shows that after-school programming is better for, A, the school community. It helps develop a better relationship with the parents. You're thinking about how you're going to pitch it to the schools to say you will do your work better, the school will become a healthier community overall if we can use this space and create this partnership so that the best interest of the child is put first, and so that students are experiencing a sense of well-being. Even using the word students is kind of a choice word if you're trying to work with schools, because even though I wear a lot of hats within the school division, when we talk with teachers and stuff, and we talk about health outcomes, or social emotional outcomes, these terms are very important to the health sector, maybe even the recreation and nonprofit sector. But at the end of the day, the education system feels still that one of the number one things they're trying to do is trying to help advance the work of education. So if you can think of how the partnership is struck around, you will have more opportunities to have stronger kids who come in the next day ready to learn if they're not being, what's the alternative, being thrown out into the community, if they're not being thrown out onto the streets, if they have more opportunities to connect with healthy adult role models, whatever the messaging is. And if you want help with that messaging, again, I definitely point you to EverActive Schools to think about that messaging. So how do you work with your schools to get that messaging right before you go in there? Because otherwise it might just seem like, again, you're adding more work to their plate to figure out how this partnership would work. Instead, if you come in and show them that I've got the evaluation and the all of the pieces already put together, and I've even got an example of a program that's working to share with you and your school community, right? So having some of that work done. Thanks.
I think the other important piece that we find when we're looking at evaluation is being able to identify what's going well, and those seem to be the easier pieces to do. And the more challenging sometimes is to identify our challenges or the barriers and to realize that we didn't get it quite right. And I think that what's really important in any partnership is to have that honest, ongoing communication and dialogue, because it is the challenges that when you work them through help create that stronger partnership. And some of the challenges that can come up can be so varied from, we can have a staffing issue right down to an accessibility issue, or, us programming the wrong material for the kids on the ground. And so just really important that you're always open to hearing that feedback around what's not working quite right within your program so that you can adjust as you go along.
I would agree. I would say, yeah, Carrie, that, you've had program staff where we've had to talk about, well, the school's feeling that your program staff, and you've had to say to me, well, we feel that your principals, and we both have to kind of be willing to go, meh, it's not that our partnership's not working, it's just that the staff are not speaking the same language, and so we've had to mediate a number of those conversations. And so that kind of work can be a little bit messy, but not attaching your organization's ego to the line when you have to move through those conversations.
Absolutely. And I don't think we have said it enough yet this afternoon, but the key to any partnership is relationship building. And in order to build that relationship, it is all about communication, and these things take time. And that is something that, as Felicia's alluded to, whether it's going for a coffee or whether it's that chat on the phone, but it's actually taking the time to build that relationship. Today, in our technology fast-paced environment, a quick email can be very helpful on detail and quick information, but doesn't quite build that depth to any relationship that is needed sometimes in whether it be face-to-face or just even on the phone conversations and going for a coffee. And even when programs may not be going well, as long as your partnership is still strong, that's key, because you can always adjust your programming and make it better. So one of the last pieces that Felicia and I wanted to share with you today is that in itself. It's sharing your success and communicating your story and documenting it. One of the important pieces that when you engage in any new work is that documentation along the way. It's really important that you're documenting your learnings, you're documenting all those right-hand turns you had to take, because it's so important. You might need to report this back to a funder. You also might need to report back to the parents in the program, and everybody from your school team to your staffing teams at the organization, as well as the broader community. One of the important pieces is being able to talk and communicate what you did, your story, your challenges, your learnings, in order to have further buy-in, whether that's a financial buy-in, whether that's parents sending their kids to your program the following year, whether that's the community offering, a discount for some snacks for the after-school program, or a local craft store donating something for your supplies for the program. We often, I know in the not-for-profit world, we sometimes forget to talk about the great work that's going on and what we're doing and how we're making a difference. And most people will say, I just didn't know. And so it's really important that you take the time to build into your program a communication strategy, and that you spend as much time as you can communicating the successes you're having and being able to promote your program.
And before we open up to more questions, I would just say that, a lot of people make sure that your communication plan fits the school's communication plan. So a lot of people are afraid of things like Twitter or Facebook, but a lot of schools have their own Facebook page, and you should ask, we're a part of your school community now. Our after-school program is a part of your school community. How can we cross-pollinate our communication plan? Because that will help increase registration numbers for the after-school program. It also ensures that if you're at a school that's perhaps a French immersion school, or if it has a really unique program running in it, then you are also making sure that your communication is tailored to meet the needs of that school community and what happens during the 9 to 3 o'clock hours. So I would think that would be a great way as well to show that you're aligned with what the school is doing and their messaging that's coming out. Okay.
I think one of the other pieces before we open up to questions that I think is so important today in the way we partner with schools that I absolutely appreciate is that it is a true partnership. It's not about a fee-for-service. It's not about them buying something. It is about us together creating something, and us together owning something, and us together problem-solving, and it belongs to both of us. And that's the example that we have in terms of working with Parkland School Division, and I appreciate that because it truly meets the definition of partnership.
And again, I'd say that I think that a lot of our municipalities, especially in our area, they also have a vested interest. They pour a lot of resources, human resources and financial resources into after-school programs or projects. But how do we? It's a moving target to figure out where our youth are and what they're doing and what services they're actually finding out there in the community. So unless we have conversations and have them at the table when we have these conversations, we can't figure out what kinds of programs and services are actually going to meet their needs and where they will show up and what they'll use. And seeing as we're out here in an area that doesn't have public transportation, we can't simply say, oh, kids don't show up, because especially in our rural communities, kids can't show up. They just don't have that choice until they're a lot older. So we have to kind of take all of those factors into consideration when we have these conversations. But most people, like I said at the very beginning, think about who comes to that visioning exercise in the very beginning, and think about who's starting to put forth some of the information and the data to figure out what kinds of programs would actually, after-school programs would actually meet the needs of the kids. And that's a really organic thing. It can change from year to year, and based on the kids you have, you might have a huge technology group one year, and then the next year you've got a bunch of kids who kind of want to try a sports sampler kind of thing. And the nice thing in working with the Boys and Girls Club is that they're able to tailor the programming because, again, they can draw from a deep well of experience and a huge tool chest, but working with the school to figure out also how does that blend into their 3-year ed plan? How does that meet the needs of what they're doing with curriculum redesign? Those are all questions that will really make the conversation relevant for schools, and it will make them more excited about opening up their doors to you. So I guess this is the part where we hope that there's lots of unmuting and asking of really super awesome questions. Or not so awesome, but just stuff that keeps you awake at night.
So if you do have a question, feel free to hit *6. I will unmute your phone.
Or a comment, things that...
Hi, Carrie and Felicia. I think we've got some people just typing their questions into the chat pod. Some people are just listening only, so they might just do it that way. So if we give them a moment, we should be able to see it. There we go. So Jack, Bryce, and Tara have asked who approached who first, and was it BB, BS, or PSD?
Well, Felicia, do you want me to take that one?
This is a little bit of a weird one, but yeah, Carrie, I'd be interested to see what you think about this one.
You know, as Felicia alluded to, we first met back when she was working with a school in the Edmonton area, and I will recall that she did call me. And from there, we built a professional relationship that when her work out in Parkland County expanded, she then picked the phone back up again, and we began to have a conversation about what could this look like in terms of partnering out there.
And I would think that most schools are, and I have, like I said, I represent 22 different schools, and the schools that want to do the work, they would find this idea of having an after-school program come in and run in their school to be a brilliant idea in concept, but they would never, ever, ever have the time during the day to even make the call to Carrie, and then Carrie would say, yeah, well, we can meet about it, and then they'd say, well, what, I have to book a sub, ask for sub-release time to then plan with, you know, it can't actualize. It would be highly unlikely that a school would be able to figure out how to get an after-school program off the ground unless it was something that the principal, the administrative team really found to be a community need. And in those schools, they get off the ground. But otherwise, you know, again, I'm assuming that most people on the line are not in an area where there is a Boys and Girls Club or a Big Brothers, Big Sisters kind of relationship, or they're looking at developing maybe a different version of it in their own school setting. I think there's a lot of research to support that schools can do this work well because they are a safe, publicly respected space, but that it's not something that we know how to do, and we need a lot of guidance around it. So that's why even when I came out to a different school board, I said, Carrie, come out here and help us do this work. And we only have one program out here to date, but we have other schools that are starting to feel it out.
And I'll just add that as an organization, we have done both. So we will at times, if there's a community need, to look at a program in a certain area of a city, we might actually approach a school. We've had conversations with schools around space, accessing their space. We know as a movement within Boys and Girls Clubs, traditionally we're known for having a club building. But from a facilities perspective, that doesn't make sense going forward. And it does make more sense for us as an organization to partner with schools if there is dollars accessible to run after-school programming in a certain neighborhood, and for us just to utilize their space.
Go ahead, the next question.
Is there a monthly fee charged for the program? There is not. We've definitely had conversations when we think about from a funding perspective. It is definitely something to consider depending on where you're running and operating. There are lots of Boys and Girls Clubs within the movement in Alberta that have what I'd actually refer to as licensed childcare. Our organization does not do any licensed childcare within the Edmonton area, and we have made a decision as an organization at this time not to charge a monthly fee. for any of our services, and we instead look for funding in order to support our initiatives.
And I would guess one of the important questions to ask the school is how many of the families, if you're looking at putting it in one of the schools, you could say, how many of your families can afford their school fees and can afford their field trip fees? Because, for example, in the schools that we have looked at, most of our schools, have a really hard time recovering those costs. So it wouldn't really make sense to put the pressure onto the after-school program to collect a nominal fee in order to run the program. It would be more work and more of a bit more of a, maybe even a stigma attached to the program in the schools that we're in. And about how many participants last year? You had 85, correct, in the program, registered in the program?
At different times, so not on a daily basis, so I'll just qualify. In terms of registrations and different children we saw between the two sites over the year. And we will work, our goal is 30 kids a day is our goal for this fall.
More questions around staffing. I'm going to let you take this one, Carrie, but I'll just say that I think if you're staffing it in a school, at least in our jurisdiction, there is the requirement that there's a school representative on site. And so that's where I would find it very interesting to explore the possibilities of this being either a teacher with a flex schedule or an education assistant who would be interested in that being a part of their work. These are more progressive ways that a school could support the staffing issue. We haven't quite gotten there, but I think we'll be moving in that direction. And then, Carrie, you can talk about qualifications.
Absolutely. We have two levels of staff that we utilize to support our after-school programming, and the entry-level staff can still be in school and potentially working towards a degree or diploma in a human service or child and youth care capacity. And then we have a facilitator level staff at each site, and that is someone who does have a diploma or degree in terms of. And so we try to, one of our strategies in terms of recruiting staff for the after-school time period is creating full-time positions, so that we are looking at staff who are in this field from a career perspective. And so what we will do sometimes is bundle the work together. Each of our sites is supported as well by some part-time, at least one part-time position and sometimes two, where they are coming in specifically just for that after-school time. And those will often be in Wabamun. I think one of them we recruited was actually a parent, but in some of our other sites they will be post-secondary students. And in terms of training, we have an agency trainer. So we've got some core training that happens for any of our staff working in our after-school programs that will talk from everything from a child safety perspective to volunteer management to program expectations and planning for programming and what program plans and templates should look like, to suicide intervention, first aid training, cultural awareness training. And so we have quite a range of training that is offered to staff. We build some of it into their first couple weeks on the job, and then some of those other pieces happen throughout a 12-month span.
I think the next one's kind of a Carrie question, too.
You know, it is, I remember when the issue of licensing came up, because we're not a licensed after-school care facility. We are not a daycare facility, and we run after-school programming, and it has a drop-in component, so parents don't have to, the kids don't necessarily attend 5 days a week. And so that is why we don't fall under the Licensed Care Act.
High five training for the staff.
We do?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that that's something you were going to talk about.
Oh, I think, you know what, I'm sorry that I don't have it with me, but I believe we have high five training coming up next month, actually. And so it is one of our core trainings that we look to. High five, Kids of Hope, We've done some training on fundamental movements. So yes, all of those components are part of our core training.
Do you find them effective, Carrie?
Yes. Oh, sorry, you're asking the question again about the number of participants. Last school year, we worked with over 80 different students, but we were at 2 different sites for that school year, and our goal is to work with 30 participants a day.
I would say, too, you could ask around the training for the staff. I think that would be another really good question to ask the school, just to say, are there ways in which you would like this program to be tailored to meet, some of the needs that you're seeing within the school community? So fundamental movements and physical literacy are really important to Parkland School Division, but maybe they have some other things that they'd want the staff to do with the students around literacy or numeracy, especially if you had a lot of younger children in your after-school program. There might be just little things that could be reinforced during the after-school program in a fun way.
And our agency also follows a very strengths-based resiliency philosophy, so all of our staff are trained in that as well when they start with us, in terms of looking at the strengths that a child will bring, and in terms of when we will look at working with a child or a family with any behaviors or concerns, that we're always coming from the area of strength and how to build on that and mitigate any behaviors that we might see that are negative behaviors. Yes, every child does complete a registration form. And so that registration form at this point is done through the organization. We have the liability because we hire the staff to run the programming. So there is a registration form that covers all of the essential demographic information and ensures that also depending on the age of the kids that we know if there's any kids that can walk home, who can pick a child up, any of those important components, allergies, Alberta Healthcare, emergency contact, all of those kind of basic necessities that need to be on with any registration form.
And is that a form that you'd be willing to share, Carrie, like if someone contacted you?
Absolutely. It's actually, our generic one is actually on our website because in order to come to any of our drop-in clubs, there's a membership club form right on our website. But I'm happy to email anything out to anybody as well.
Again, I think you guys have a lot of resources that if you're just doing this as community-based work, you can go onto your website and kind of say, hey, this might work for us, and tweak it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate. So our website is, because our organization is Boys and Girls Clubs, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, we just use a nice little abbreviation, which is BGC Bigs, BGCBIGS is our website. bgcbigs.ca. We also have 2 parent families, and so we're very fortunate that we belong to Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada and Boys and Girls Clubs of Canada. There's a wealth of knowledge on both of those from a mentoring and volunteer management perspective on the Big Brother Big Sister, and then on the Boys and Girls Clubs from a after-school programming perspective. So both of those websites as well come from some very best practices, some standards, some policy pieces, and some great research pieces that are on both of those national websites. I just noticed the question around, can the kids attend 5 days a week? This year they can. Last year when we piloted the program, we actually ran it 3 days a week for the elementary students. 3 days and 2 days, and then 2 days a week for our junior high kids. But due to our funding requirements, we will be offering the program this year. We've adjusted our model slightly, and we are running the program 5 days a week for the elementary students and utilizing our junior high students as volunteer mentors.
Keep going there, Carrie. You've got more questions about licensing, it looks like. And then, Caitlin, is the presentation going to be available after school?
As a Boys and Girls Club, so I just want to be clear with the licensing piece because I don't want to misinterpret. We, as a Boys and Girls Club, we have certain standards as we belong to our national organization and for our national insurance on both our Big Brother, Big Sister side and our Boys and Girls Club sides. So yes, we do have standards that we adhere to. We are not a licensed child care provider, not a daycare. So that's what I mean by licensed. We go through an accreditation process on both the Big Brother side and the Boys and Girls Club side. So yes, there are standards and pieces that we follow belonging to our national organizations. And Caitlin, are you able to address the question of whether this presentation is available after?
Yeah, I can. So Cassie was asking. I know Jennifer with Lynn is recording these webinars, and the first one is currently available on the EverActive website. And I can work with Jennifer to see if we can also have them available on the Active After School website. But the first one is available on our EverActive site, and this one will be as well.
Wonderful. Okay, and does the program offer structured activities? Yes, we have 5 areas of programming that we focus on, and depending on our time frames, sometimes we've got certain programs that can offer all 5 within a 3-hour block, and sometimes all 5 are offered within that week block. And those 5 areas of programming are health and nutrition, academic support, physical activity, growth, empowerment, and leadership opportunities, and then arts and culture. So I think we've covered most of the questions on the chat. Does anyone else have anything else that they would like to ask?
You're welcome. And for the record, that wasn't my stroke ever. So that's okay.
And if there's anybody on the phone, did they want to unmute their phone and ask a question? Please feel free.
Come on. And I had a name and everything. I had made that reservation. And it was on the job board. Hi, this is Caitlin again. I don't think there's any more questions. If there are, then just feel free to interrupt me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I just, unless there's any other questions, I just wanted to thank Carrie and Felicia for this presentation. I think that you guys have done a really good job of outlining these kind of 7 steps that, you know, if you are a program who's been in the past maybe attempted to get into the schools and have been slightly unsuccessful, this might create a bit of a roadmap to guide that work again in the future. So those 7 steps, you guys talked about vision, profile, roadmap, resources, roles and responsibilities, evaluation, and then communication. So I think that would be a really great start. And then some other really interesting things I heard you guys say, which I think can be very helpful. Felicia, you talked about the importance of face-to-face meetings and just sitting down for coffee. You talked about a common language, so maybe using the word student versus participant. And I think one thing I heard too was be creative. So sometimes what works in one community isn't going to be what works in another community, and to really use those 7 steps to sort through the needs of your individual school community and how that partnership can work well. So I thank you both, and is there any other questions? If you want to just type, that's good. I do have just a couple kind of housekeeping things for EverActive Schools, if you guys could all indulge me for a moment. So EverActive is really interested in this topic. As I'm, you guys have done a really great job navigating this, but we know that navigating these relationships isn't always easy and it takes a lot of time. So we are interested in what kind of other partnerships currently exist out there between schools and community. So we've created a survey, and I'm just going to put it in a chat box here, and we'd love to hear from everyone if you have 5 to 10 minutes to dedicate to filling out that survey. Also, Felicia and Carrie have included a bit of a plug right there for me on the screen. We have our Shaping the Future conference coming up in January, January 29th to 31st in Kananaskis. It's all about, bringing people from education, health, active living, recreation, and community all in one space to really kind of focus in on that comprehensive school health that Felicia talked about earlier in her presentation. And we actually have a full pre-conference this year on school community partnerships. So again, we want to dive even more conversation. We don't have all the answers, but I think getting a group together and talking about some of the successes there and some of the challenges that we can get more tools in our belt to navigate relationships. So unless there's any other questions, I thank you for your time. Within a week or two, this is up on the EverActive site, and I can work with Lynn to see if we can get up on the Active After School site as well. And thank you all. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I will include it in the chat, or also Carrie and Felicia have included their email. Jennifer, did you want to say anything about a small evaluation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just going to bring an evaluation up now on the screen. If you can take a moment just before you close out of here, that would be really appreciated. All of these answers are confidential, and they will not be broadcasted for anybody to view. Thank you very much, everyone.